Well, hey there, folks. We are live. Welcome to Thursday edition of Out Back with Jack. Again, for those that are used to the schedule, we've been running for almost a year now, I guess. Expert panels are going back to Friday, so tomorrow will be an expert panel Q&A show, and there probably won't be a live feed tomorrow for my segment. We'll see. I'm not even sure what I'm going to talk about yet, so how would I know? Anyway, what are we going to talk about today? Guys, we're going to talk about, well, TSP swag is coming. We'll talk a little bit about that soon. There's an aluminum shortage on the way. Why? It's not because we're running out of aluminum, that's for sure. It's part of the bursty everything shortages that I've been saying we would have. You know, the economist that is the redneck hippie duck farmer tends to be pretty right over time about stuff like that. Minneapolis teachers are being laid off based on race. All the white people get laid off first. You know what? I don't even care. I think there's a much more interesting angle if we look at the fact that Minneapolis is laying off teachers. Target just posted a 90% drop in Q2 profits. 90% drop. The recession is here. We'll talk about that. I'm going to show you a video. It's a segment of a video by Paul Joseph Watson. It's 30 seconds. Those of you on the audio only, you'll have to look it up for yourself. You've probably seen it. But I really want you to look at the part where they zoom in. It's Biden signing the $750 billion Inflation Reduction Act. That's not what I'm talking about with this, though. It's the look on his face. Dude is not there. If you watch this video and you say, after watching it, you don't believe Joe Biden has dementia, you're either lying or you have dementia yourself. And this is not something to tap dance about. Rand Paul has introduced an act. It's kind of virtue signaling because I think when any congressman or senator introduces a bill and it has no prayer of being passed, it's kind of virtue signaling. But it does a good job in the virtue world. He just introduced an act to repeal the Espionage Act. The Espionage Act. We're going to talk about how a lot of things that we think are, modern day and things that used to be that way in great grandpa's day or whatever, they're all the same. The Espionage Act never did what it said, nor did its name say what it was. Kind of like the Patriot Act or the Inflation Reduction Act, things like that. Some teachers are very proud of the fact that they banned Legos. We'll go through a little bit of their fantasy world that they have justified their banning of Legos with. It's stupid. It burns. It burns. And they probably believe their own bullshit. And many of you have sent me videos of the absolute complete intellectual derps, the geeks that give geeks a bad name, from the IRS recruiting video where they're teaching them how to handle guns and arrest people with guns. And a lot of people want to mock them. I'm going to tell you why these types of people with guns are incredibly dangerous to society. And I'm going to tell you, it's not just the IRS this applies to. This is an incredibly dangerous thing that's being done. And it's not because they're going to come get us all around us. No. And when I say dangerous, I don't mean that they're going to turn into Delta operators overnight. Far from it. That's actually the problem. A coward who doesn't know what they're doing with a firearm and a badge is dangerous. Very, very, very dangerous. And then we're going to talk about electric cars. Biden and Schumer and Pelosi's $750 billion Inflation Reduction Act put some rebates in it for electric cars. Funny thing, like all the cars that like it actually will give you a rebate on, they just went up by almost exactly the amount of the rebate. But I have a different question about electric vehicles. And this won't be kick the electric vehicle as a technology day because I don't believe in that. I think a lot of things you guys are saying about electric vehicles out there, not necessarily the people listening to this video right now, but a lot of people out there that are saying things about electric vehicles, you're wrong. The technology is not bad. An electric vehicle should actually last longer than a gas vehicle in a myriad of ways. But there's a problem. There's a problem here. A big one. We'll talk about it, and we'll ask a question. Why ain't anybody in the media asking this question? And I include all media, like, Newsmax, Fox News, all the right-wing stuff, too. Like, you'd think somebody would ask this question. Anyway, before we do that, let me remind you I will never contact you for any personal information or private chat in the video comments. Just because you see my logo does not mean it's me. In fact, it probably isn't. And that includes Instagram. I say this all the time, and I get reports all the time. Somebody tried to get me on Instagram. They were pretending to be you. I know. I've reported it. Instagram doesn't care. They don't care about you. No big surprise there. So let's start off with our sponsor of the day. I have a cool new offer for you from Paul Wheaton and Wheaton Labs. Paul is a really cool dude. Paul and I disagree about some things here and there. Like I think any two people that are passionate about what they would do will. But I love that Paul has put things to the test. And he has a 2+ hour tour of Wheaton Labs. He goes over 40 different projects, berm sheds, solar dehydrators, rocket mass heaters, the easy bake coffin, and a bunch more projects. $15. $15, you get the video download, and you can find out all about what this crazy ass Yeti's been doing up in the wilds of Montana. There'll be a link in the video notes below that you can get on over to the audio version with all the resources, all of the proof points behind everything I'm going to cover today. But right in the video now, there's a link down there straight to where you can get this special deal from Paul. If you've always wondered, like, is he really doing all the crazy shit that he says he does, and does it all work, or what does work and what doesn't? Watch this video. It's totally worth 2 hours of your time at $15. Anyway, let's get on into this. I want to start off. Some of you commented on the hat, and if you're in the audio only, you can't see the hat, right? You're not really privy to the hat. You'll have to look up the video or the pictures. But we actually have a swag store coming very, very soon. If you go to tspswag.com, you'll see that it's basically sort of kind of there already. It basically says you can't order yet, but you can put in your email, and we'll show it to you. We'll send you an email when stuff's available. But I've got up on the screen right now some of the stuff that we already have ready to go. Just real quick, it is going to be a print-on-demand type operation. So you order it. It's not like Amazon. It'll be there the next day. It's quick, but it's not that quick. And because of that, those type of operations, the unit cost per sale is going to be more. We have to charge more because it costs us more than ordering 1,000 shirts pre-printed, right? But the beauty of that is we can have a huge catalog of gear right out of the gate. And when we come up with an idea on the fly, we can make it happen pretty quick. So if I say something and you're like, man, that should be a t-shirt, well, we'll be able to make it be a t-shirt. And you can learn more about it in the show notes today as well. So just wanted to throw that real quick. So let's start off with, I'm not going to put everything up on the screen because it's just redundant, but you can trust me when I tell you that a aluminum shortage is coming. And this is something that's already affecting prices in the metals markets and futures markets and things like that. It's for a variety of reasons. And with this looming aluminum shortage, we just had a fairly large aluminum plant in the United States close its doors forever and say we're going away. We have several plants in Europe shutting down. And yet we have an aluminum shortage. Now, we use aluminum for a lot of stuff, don't we? It's not just for, soda cans and beer cans. We use a lot of stuff we use aluminum for. And so that's a shortage of everything that's made with aluminum, like parts for aircraft. You can't build aircraft without aluminum. Well, I guess you can. You can make old school biplanes out of wood and fabric, but you can't build airplanes out of steel. It's too heavy. It's really important to things like, the defense of a country or countries, especially in a time of war. So did the aluminum reserves dry up? Did somebody lose all the, cans that were turned in? Is that why? No. Did somebody bomb the aluminum mines so we can't mine aluminum anymore? No. Anybody out there know why? Why there's going to be an aluminum shortage? Because there's an energy shortage, and it's going to get worse, especially in Europe. So several of the larger production facilities for aluminum in Europe have been told by the government, you got to close down for a while, especially because this winter's coming. Like that, you can make some for now, but like you see, we're going to have like a really hard time like keeping lights on and heat on for people in the cities. So we can't have you guys, using all that energy to make aluminum. Aluminum is incredibly energy intensive. It's the most, to go from ore to final product, aluminum is the most energy intensive metal that we make. And it uses a lot of electricity. And because of that, we have this great big shortage of aluminum and everything that's made out of aluminum. Now, do we have to have an energy shortage? No. Why are we going to have an energy shortage? Because we've decided that we need to punish Putin and make sure that he doesn't sell his energy into Europe. So he's just selling his energy to anybody else that wants to buy it, and he's making more money than he's ever made in his life while people starve and freeze in Europe this coming winter. And we experience a global shortage of aluminum, which is like one of the most important materials in modern society. But don't worry about it. I'm sure we're still winning. Now, this is something you have to ask yourself. Why are we having an aluminum plant in America closed down for this? We're not super short on energy here. We have plenty of energy. The final question I'm going to ask you today is going to tell you why. Well, not necessarily as much as we need to do all the things they want to do. But why would we have this happening? There's something else that people don't understand about aluminum. It's a very dirty business. I went to the Alcoa plant in Arkansas, and there's as much work in putting things into the landfill and making sure they don't leach out as there isn't to making the aluminum. What that means is bringing new facilities online is going to be very difficult in our modern society today. Anywhere outside of, I don't know, some place where they don't care about the environment. Some place where they're like, yeah, you guys all, we're all in on this climate shit. Here's some solar panels we made you. Go ahead, yeah. But they burn the shit out of coal. They mine shit out of coal. They do it in the most dirty way possible to mine coal. They're into strip mining, and they have they harvest rare earth elements outside of their own country in horrible ways as well. They kind of have one of our Western buddies. Yeah, there it is. You got it. China. Yeah. China will be able to make all the aluminum it wants. It doesn't give a shit. China's using fossil fuels to make all this alternative technology to sell to us at huge profits, while they use central banking controls to make sure that they peg their currency exactly where they want it against our currency at all times. So why would the United States give up its sovereignty on one of the most important materials for national defense and for an industry as a whole to China? And then why would the TV not even tell you about it? Like I said, all the links, all the resources, all the proof points will be in the audio version. Link in the video notes about 1 hour after this live stream ends. You can doubt me if you want, but when you go check, you're going to see that nobody's surprised by this. Futures were hugely up on NASDAQ and London Metal Exchange, etc. yesterday. Nobody talks about it. I checked around, they're barely even talking about it on the financial side of things. It's just as hey, you can make some money on this. Interesting. We'll let that one go. All right, next up. Teachers in Minneapolis are being laid off. The number I was able to come with, somewhere in a number of 11%. While they say there's over 200 positions that remain unfilled. Do you know why? Because they're administrator positions and they're the guy that cleans the shit out of the trash can. They're laying off about 11% of teachers in Minneapolis. Some genius said in the Minneapolis school system said, hey, if we're going to walk the walk and talk the talk on equity and racial justice man, then no teachers of color should lose their jobs while some privileged white teacher keeps theirs. So this has already blown a lot of flack, and I think they've already, like, the teachers union, like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this. But they did it. It might not survive, but they did. It's highly illegal. There's already court precedent saying you can't do this. But those dipshits said that they would make sure that before one person of color or an underprivileged demographic was laid off or let go, that all the white people would go first. And this is what's on TV. This is what everybody's losing their mind about. You know what I say? F them. I don't give a shit. There is no demographic that has swallowed more of this woke nonsense than public school teachers, especially in Minneapolis. Right? You can feign your outrage and clutch your pearls now. Why? Because it affected you, Ethel? Okay? I don't give a shit about you losing your job. I don't care. There's something that we should be asking here. Why are you getting rid of 11% of the heroes that don't wear capes? What's going on, Minneapolis? What happened? What happened? How did this happen? I mean, you get a job as a teacher. You have a job for life. It doesn't pay good, even though it does. You only work like 6 months out of the year. Yes, I know it's more like 9. I'm talking about all the days off. It's less than 180 days a year. How do you lose your job? Oh, did your student enrollment go down? Did it drop? Did people flee your shitty city and flee your shitty state in droves? But that wouldn't account for it. See, I looked at that. I said, self, before you say they all went to Florida, like someone did here in chat, I saw it, right? How many of them went to Florida? How many of them actually left? Decent amount, but not enough to account for losing 11% of your student body, which they actually lost more than that. That's what they can cobble back to hold together. They quit going to your shitty state schools. Homeschooling has continued to grow by the millions of new students since the COVID started. And I'm just trying to remember. There was this guy. It's kind of crazy guy, you know? Thinks he knows a lot. He's kind of a jerk. It said this would happen. He wrote an article about it like 2 years ago. And he said that there would be layoffs in the public school system, the government school system, and it would have an adverse effect on local economies wherever it happened because you're taking people that are much better paid than they claim to be, who have guaranteed jobs and therefore good credit, and you're unemploying them. Who was that jackass? What was his name again? Wasn't he some kind of redneck that farms ducks and doesn't know jack shit about the economy? Oh, that's right. His name was Jack. He's a jerk. It's only beginning. It's only beginning. They're holding this together. But there's districts all over the place where they're beginning to no longer be able to justify the head count. And what they're trying to do is, as teachers leave, let atrophy handle the problem. They'll talk about teacher shortages out of one side of their mouth while they lay off teachers on the other side. It's coming, and it's going to be more. And this is something we need to understand about what's been done to our country and done to our society. Most people that live in regular neighborhoods, like many of us grew up in as children, when we were kids in the 80s, maybe we raised ourselves, but we've talked about this before, hadn't we? The parent internet. You went off and did some shit you shouldn't have done on the other side of town, and by the time you got home, your parents or grandparents knew you did that shit. Why? Because they picked up those old-ass rotary phones and dialed and said, hey, you know what your kid just did on his bicycle over here in Marlin? And when you got home, you got your ass whooped and your bike taken away? Remember all that? Do you know how were our grandparents and parents able to communicate like this? Because they knew each other. That's how. They talked to each other. They went to lodges together. They went to churches together. They went to the bars together. They hung out. And not just in little cliques. Everybody knew everybody. Like we used to have a saying. Somebody would say, do you know so-and-so? And you either said, yeah, I know him. No, I don't. Or I know him to see. It's amazing how many people you knew who they were, even if you didn't really hang out. You just knew who, oh, that's Dan Goss. Okay. Yeah, I know him to see. Right? I know him to see. You ask the average person now who lives in a much smaller subdivision as far as lot size, more houses in less square acres, more people. Tell me the names of 12 different families that live within a mile of your house. They don't know, and they don't talk to each other. They don't want to talk to each other. Maybe you know the neighbor on one side, and the other guy, you don't really like him, but maybe you know who he is too. And guy across the street, I don't know. His name's Smith. How do you know? I saw it on his mailbox, right? Something like that. Do you think, as effed up as our school system is, that there wouldn't be far more people with homeschool solutions if we just knew everybody around us, if we all talked? These people out there are like, well, we all need to get together and hire ourselves a teacher who doesn't want to teach in the schools no more to teach your kids what, the same stupid dirt shit that they're learning in your schools right now. You don't need a teacher. You need somebody to supervise kids and make sure they do what they're supposed to do and that they're not beating each other up and stealing each other's shit. You need a babysitter. That's all these damn teachers are doing anymore. The freaking state sets the curriculum, does everything. I don't mean to talk down to all teachers. I know some of y'all try real hard. But in general, over half of y'all don't do jack shit. And I know you don't because I've seen the results of it. Some of you are using the curriculum that my kids use. You're playing videos from Acellus in your damn classrooms. Over 6,000 public schools are using their curriculum while the teacher sits there and makes sure nobody causes any shit. Wherein as they can. And they can't get rid of the ones that do. You don't think if the average person knew the names of 20 or 30 families around them, that you couldn't come up with, hey, we just need a couple places, maybe different days, different places kids can go and some supervision. And maybe you do need to like personally homeschool your kid, get them up to like a second grade level where they're functional. But with the curriculums we have, like Ron Paul curriculum, like Acellus Academy that I use, where you have teachers reaching out, tuition's freaking $80 a month. Come on. You don't think that there wouldn't be more millions of kids pulled out of that system? Know this. It's bigger than the school thing. How many solutions would we be able to develop with tighter community? Now, why do you think they've destroyed community? Why do you think they've incentivized people to go into political tribal camps and not talk to each other? Why do you think we've literally built neighborhoods where we cram people closer together, but we build them in such a way that people don't talk to each other? Why you don't think it was all a play? Why do you think we decided some random ass number like you gotta stay 6 feet away from people, then you won't get Corona AIDS? You think that number was just really randomly pulled out of somebody's ass? You don't think it's a social engineering number? You don't think what's been done to this country in the last 70 years has been exactly by a plan? There's the word. Green Skull Farm has it. Control. Control. You want to control people? You keep them from talking to each other. You convince them they're each other's enemy. So when I say things like, if you really want to homeschool, you can, and you're like, jerk, I'm a single parent, and I can't. I got to work 12 hours a day. You can't. I agree. You, by yourself, can't. It doesn't mean it can't be done. What you need is help. What you need is people working together. What you need is basically co-ops, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the way we normally think of a co-op. I'm just about people cooperating together. We don't necessarily need parents at all times either. When I was a kid and two parents wanted to go out on date night, They hired a 16-year-old girl to come in and babysit, make sure nobody choked to death. And it usually worked out. We can start taking some of the older kids, giving them that kind of one-room schoolhouse responsibility. There's a ton of solutions here, but it all starts with knowing all your neighbors and all your neighbors' neighbors and all their neighbors and have them all know you. And that's actually harder than the solutions. That's step one. But let's just keep talking about how if we tax the right people or elect the right people, we'll fix their problems that's all caused by this. Next up, I want to talk, we don't have a recession. No, there's no recession. I know we had 2 consecutive quarters of declining economic results, and that's normally the definition. But most economists look for a broader definition of recession. Yeah. Target, one of the biggest retailers in the United States, has seen a decline in profits Q2 to Q2. Just released the Q2 numbers now that we're going into Q4. That's how that works. 90% decline in profit. I'm going to play this video for you, and I'll be back and we'll talk about it.
From major retailers to everyday families.
Like I tell my kids, it's just the stuff that you need, not the stuff that you want.
The ripple effects of inflation are reaching every corner of American life. Target confirming their second quarter profits plummeted roughly 90% from last year, with executives blaming price slashes on excess merchandise, goods stuck on cargo ships during the pandemic that have now arrived en masse. Consumers grappling with their own money woes.
We try to go from store to store and get, whatever is cheaper.
Less than 24 hours after President Biden promised relief via the Inflation Reduction Act, new federal data shows between June and July, spending remained stagnant, with Americans shifting minimal savings from falling gas prices to afford basics. Online shopping is up, as are some retail sectors, namely food sales, but not nearly enough to cover decades-high inflation. Translation: families are spending more on less.
Yeah, everything here is store brand.
While restaurants patiently take the hit.
One day, chicken wings are affordable and great, and the next day you can't afford chicken wings for the price.
At Stadium Club in McCook, Illinois, Steve Palmer changes the menu weekly to work around fluctuating prices. The stress holds steady.
My house is on the line for my business. So if I have a bad week, who knows?
The toughest part? The uncertainty. Experts share that pain.
We're still a bit confused about where this economy is going. The economy is neither sort of plunging nor soaring. It's kind of holding there in the middle, and we're waiting to see what happens.
And guys, one retail sector in particular that took a big hit month to month is car sales. Auto sales down roughly 1.5%. And dealers tell us it's not because demand is low. They say they actually don't have the inventory. Amid the chip shortage, they literally don't have the cars to sell, with some customers waiting 8 to 10 months for the car they want to buy to be available, just adding to that frustration for, again, everyday Americans.
Yeah. So I'm sure an aluminum shortage will help, the car industry get back on its feet faster and make vehicles available. I'm sure it'll help with the electric vehicles we're going to talk about at the end. The denial that we're in a recession is unbelievable. And what people have tried to make the case of is because there are jobs available and people can work and people can get jobs and jobs are unfilled and unemployment is relatively low, that we're not in a recession. A recession is not defined by a lack of employment. It's defined by a lack of ability to get the food and the things that you need for the money that you have. You can have a very high employment rate, and the unemployment rate, let's be honest, is much higher than they want to admit. But you can have very high employment numbers, and you can still have a recession. Everybody can have a job, for making Lego wages, and we'll get to the Legos in a bit. It's going to be fun. I don't know if I'll read it all to you because I think your IQ will go down if I do when I get to that story. It's stupid. But yeah, a 90% drop in Q2 profits. And our solution is we're going to spend $750 billion. But I want to move on to that. This is something you're not going to get the full impact if you're on the audio only version. And you'll want to look this up if you haven't seen it. I imagine most of you have seen it. I'm going to play this one from Paul Joseph Watson, though, because he zooms in on Biden's face. Like he replays it. And I'm going to stop it when we get there. And I want you to look at this. And I want you to ask yourself if you've ever seen somebody with this look on their face before, and what were the circumstances in which you saw a person with a look like this on their face. This is not something that I am doing to, of course, Paul doesn't look too good, Paul there himself, does he? This is not something I'm doing to spike the football or gloat. This is something I'm doing because it's an incredibly dangerous situation for our country to be in my opinion. Here we go.
Look, I'm sorry, but it's becoming painfully obvious with each passing day. Dementia is hard enough to cope with when it happens in your own family. I remember when it happened to my grandma, but this guy is the President of the United States. Take a look. Let's zoom in and slow it down a bit. I mean, come on, he just looks totally lost.
Look at this. Look at this. I'm asking the people real time here in the comments and in the live chat. Have you ever seen this look on a person's face before? I have. And I have to say, it's worse than it's dementia. I've dealt with some loved ones in my life going through dementia, and Paul Watson's right. It's hard. But generally, maybe they don't know where they are. Maybe they get confused, but they don't actually generally look like this. The only time I've seen someone look like this, look at the man's eyes. This almost makes you think of like old movies when they showed somebody that was dead or going to die or really sick or something like that. They would like make their eyes go all black. The only time I've seen people with a look on their face like this is when they're on freaking drugs. And I mean really hard on drugs. I don't think this guy just has dementia. I think he's being propped up with drugs and medication to make his limited number of appearances as a complete sock puppet in our government. Now, you guys know I tell you that presidents don't mean as much as you think they mean, no matter who they are, whether they're orange or otherwise, because there is a deep state control apparatus that actually controls a lot of things. But there is something to be said when you do have someone serving as a president and the commander-in-chief of our military forces. They do have the ability at times when their cabinet wants to go another way, the deep state, to go, no, we are or aren't doing this thing, and it's happening or not happening right now. To not have that, when you have a country this size, with this much power, with this much capability, both financially and militarily, soft and hard power around the world, and you have that as your commander-in-chief of your military. You have that as the person that decides whether or not we enter into sanctions, which, by the way, no matter what anybody tells you, I said today that they're feeding you bullshit soup on steroids. One thing they've been feeding you that's bullshit soup on steroids forever is that sanctioning a country is not an act of war. Sanctioning a country is an act of war. So you have somebody rubber stamping acts of war with no idea why he's even where he is. And I'm sorry. And I am not tap dancing here. I don't think this is a good thing. I'm not, let's get rid of Biden, man, because I know what comes next, right? Yeah, the Wicked Witch of the West, right? Kamala. Like, when they picked her for VP, I'm like, this is the dumbest thing that any political party has ever done. And then I went, oh, wait a minute. Scratch that. If you want to keep the puffed up suit, guy is literally like one step away from being Weekend at Bernie's at this point, in his chair to rubber stamp your shit, Kamala Harris was a brilliant pick. I want you to go back and think about people who won the presidency and who they picked as running mates. Let's go back. Let's go back to Trump. He picked Pence. A lot of hate for Pence over January 6th. I don't give a shit. You know what Pence was? Safe. Not ambitious, not super well known, no threat to a sitting president to challenge him, to try to get rid of him, to take his seat, to push him out, to go against him in re-election. You see how that works? Who did everybody want Obama to pick? Now, when I say everybody, I mean all of the left-wing lunatics. Hillary. That was the obvious. Hillary was a threat to the Obama White House. They gave her a cabinet position, something to do, pass the time. It will be her turn later. Biden. Biden, who lost every presidential primary he ever ran in. Biden, who was no threat to Obama. Biden, who is only president today because of the extreme circumstances and a decision to put an empty suit in a chair. Let's go back from there. Who was Bush's running mate? Dick Cheney. Darth Vader himself, man. Evil Sith, but no desire for the presidency. Let's go back from there. Al Gore. Al Gore. Al Gore was no threat to Bill Clinton's White House. Let's go back from there. I'm not going to eat any more broccoli, but I am going to appoint Dan Quayle as my VP running mate. You see how this works? The strongest vice presidential as a standalone candidate that I can remember in my life was Bush the Elder. And he got pantsed by Reagan in the primaries. He was no threat to Reagan. You pick a VP who's good enough to fill the chair, but no threat to the sitting president. That's the safe pick. That's what it's been for a long time. That's the way it's been done. You see how that works? So who is a better pick to keep the empty suit in place right now than Kamala Harris? It was a genius pick. She's the second most powerful person in the world. The vice president doesn't have shit power that the president doesn't bequeath to them. They can sit and break ties in the Senate, and that's about it. They do diplomatic bullshit. They have no authority unless it's handed to them. Basically, they're made a czar of something. She's not the second most powerful person in the world. That's a nonsensical argument. She is a heartbeat away from the nuclear codes, though. That's the bad side of it. I didn't say it was brilliant for us. I said it was brilliant for them. I don't think Biden would still be in office if there was a strong vice president sitting next to him. He'd have been gone. His own party, the Senate and the House, would have looked at it and said, we got to either you guys in the cabinet, you guys either invoke, was it 25th Amendment or whatever it is, right? You guys either do that or we're going to do something because this can't. But hey, when you're looking at, right, you guys know the picture I'm talking about. You guys that listen to audio, you can't see it, right? But you're looking at that, right? You're looking at that taking over. You're like, oh shit, no way, man. I don't want that. All the people that are out there calling for Biden to be impeached, you notice they're all saying in Harris too. What are you going to impeach her for? Being there? Yeah. It was a chess play. It was a gambit, but it was a good one if you're the people that are running the puppet show right now. Let's go on from there. Rand Paul and the Trump people are making a big deal. Rand Paul is going to rug pull the charges against Orange Man before it even happens. Okay, this is not going to pass. But it's an interesting little discussion to have here. Again, you can look up the links and get the proof points and all after the live stream's over in the audio version on my website at thesurvivalpodcast.com if you've got anything to say. But the Espionage Act, well, what was that for? Well, it was to stop espionage, right? No. The Espionage Act was passed in 1917. So you mean that it was completely legal to commit espionage against the United States until 1917? Do we need it? We needed a law to make espionage illegal and explain what espionage was. You don't think in 1916, if you had been like spying and giving aid to the enemy or something like that, you wouldn't have got your ass lined up against a wall and shot for it? Did we need the Espionage Act to stop espionage? No. So what was the purpose of the Espionage Act? Well, see, we had this little thing coming up called World War I. And there were pesky people out there. We call them independent thinkers. And they were saying, wait a minute, whoa. Why is the United States going to get involved in this war in Europe? I know you're calling it a world war, but it literally doesn't affect North and South America at all. Like, they're killing each other in trenches over there. More people are dying from like the flu and disease and infection and tetanus than bullets. And lots of people are dying from bullets and bombs and mustard gas. Why are we getting involved? Now, you shut up. You're a tool of the Kaiser. And then they introduced this thing called a draft, because not a lot of people were lining up to go become cannon fodder over in Europe for some bullshit they didn't understand. And people started saying, hey, screw this. Don't register for the draft. Don't go. Don't get involved. So they passed the Espionage Act specifically to target those people and shut them up and shut them down. That was the entire purpose of the Espionage Act. It was a political weapon to shut up dissenters. So it's not such a modern thing. Alien and Seditions Act, anyone under John frickin' Adams? It was the same shit back then. But here's the pattern. And you think it's new, but it's not. This is why I call it, like, when I'll say the Flowers for Orphans bill, right? Like they just paint it with something that sounds good, and then you attack anybody that's like, you're not for Flowers for Orphans? What a horrible tool of Putin you are. Right? So let's think about some recent, and when I say recent, I mean like 20, 30 years, big laws that did massive changes to the way we do things in the United States. How about the Patriot Act? Those of you that run businesses and you have like a merchant account, like a PayPal or a Stripe or something like that, and every year you get a little piece of paper from them that says 1099K on it, and it says all the revenue that came in and went out of your account if it's over a certain amount of number of transactions, a certain amount of money, that thing. Do you know where that thing came from? Patriot Act. We have to fight Osama bin Laden in caves, and I know what he's doing. He's making money off of Bill's widget business, and we need a 1099K to make sure Bill is not paying for Obama's cave. That's the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act redefined a relationship that you would have with your bank for a safe deposit box, not an account, as a financial relationship reportable to the federal government. I know what it is, guys. Osama bin Laden and his folks, they're hiding shit. They're hiding shit in Bob's safe deposit box. We might need to go in there, but it's his private property, and it's a rental contract, and it's not. No, we'll just say it is. Put it in the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act was not patriotic. The Freedom Act did not expand freedom. It took away freedoms. It expanded on the Patriot Act that was not patriotic. Can you think of a bill in your adult life that was big enough that they gave it some sort of name like that ever did what it says or said what it actually was going to do? You can almost just say to yourself, self, whatever they say the bill is called, it's the opposite. So the Patriot Act was the non-Patriot Act, right? It took away what it meant to have protections as being a citizen of this republic in many ways. The Freedom Act was the Anti-Freedom Act. It encroached upon individual freedoms and liberties further. So what do you think the Inflation Reduction Act is going to do? Well, of course it's going to increase inflation, because when you print $750 billion more dollars you don't have and spend it into an economy, you cause inflation. That's how we got here. But there's always all this other shit. at least you go look up the Espionage Act. It was a shitbag move to shut dissenters up and use as a political weapon, and it's been used as a political weapon ever since. We'll get to one specific way how in here in a second. But at least it didn't have a whole bunch of changes to like all kinds of other unconnected, unrelated things in it. It didn't say, hey, to do this, we need 87,000 IRS agents. We'll get to those clowns here in a minute. It didn't say we need to put rebates on the Model T so everybody can have one. We need to get rid of these highly polluting horses. It didn't have shit like that on. That's where we've changed. It's not just giving a thing a name that will garner support on name alone because nobody reads it. That's like shit. Nobody reads it. We need at least 1,000 pages of bullshit in there, and we need to boondoggle some other shit. So, what else is in there is a rebate on electric cars. That's our final bullet point today. What the hell does that have to do with inflation reduction? Well, you're going to find out it doesn't have anything. It has a lot to do with inflation increasing. It's not new, guys. It's not new that you take, and this is the formula. You conjure up a crisis if one doesn't exist. And if one does exist, you lather it up and you make it worse than it is. Then you come up with a solution that has nothing to do with it, but you name it the anti-crisis thing bill. And then you introduce it and you promise that it'll fix the crisis that's not actually a crisis, or the crisis that's nowhere near as big as it's going to be after you get done fixing it, like the Affordable Care Act. Does anybody here, does your insurance do now more for you and cost less than it did before the Affordable Care Act? Or did it make your health care worse quality and more expensive and less affordable? Which one is it? Right? It's all the same shit and it's all the same pattern. But there's a bunch of shit in there that had nothing to do with health care. But you say you want grandma to die. You don't care about poor people having health insurance. And then you say, well, wait a minute. Let's ramp that shit. You don't care about poor people getting health care. And you equate insurance with care. You don't think that orphans deserve flowers. You're a traitor. You're a tool of Putin or whatever. You are ultra MAGA or whatever. You're a domestic terrorist. And you say that about anybody that questions anything of your thing. And you ramrod it through and people applaud. And it's just like the scene in Star Wars that liberty dies to thunderous applause. Except it doesn't happen once. And then this evil Sith Lord takes over. It happens incrementally over time. And you know what I know some of you, well, what are we going to do about it? You're not going to do anything about it. This shit has been going on since the dawn of the Republic, and you think you're going to fix it with an electoral process? You're out of your mind. You fix it by mitigating its effects on your life. And I know that's not a perfect answer, but I'm not the one feeding you bullshit soup now, am I? I'm the one giving you facts, logic, and reason. So when something isn't going to be fixed, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it is. I'm not going to be like, we all just get out and vote. We take the House and the Senate, and we bring the Orange Man back. This will all get better. Because a lot of this shit got a lot worse while the Orange Man was here and the GOP had the House and Senate. You know, the GOP House that voted 9 times to repeal Obamacare. 9 times they voted to repeal it when they didn't have the Senate and the White House. Then they got the Senate and the White House. And they did exactly what Jack said they would do, didn't they? Not a damn thing. Can vote 9 times to repeal it when it doesn't actually matter. That's the definition of virtue signaling. Yeah. Now, let's talk about something else really stupid. Against my better judgment, I'm going to put this one up on the screen. So give me just a second to do it. But this is on rethinking schools. I'm all for rethinking schools, but you have to be able to think if you're going to use the term rethink, right? That makes sense. This is one of the dumbest things, and it's long. And I just want to make sure that I'm not pulling all from memory. But there is a level of fantasy in this. And the title of this crap is Why We Banned Legos. And this was early childhood classroom ages 5 to 9. Here's some of their imaginary discussions that they had. I'm making an airport and a landing strip for my guy's house. He has his own airplane, said Oliver. That's not fair, said Carl. That takes too many cool pieces and leaves not enough for me. Well, I can let other people use the landing strip if they have airplanes, said Oliver. Then it's fair for me to use more cool pieces because it's for public use. Hold on a freaking second. I'm already going, bullshit detector. A 5 to 9-year-old kid justified his use of Legos to make a landing strip because it's a public work. That's what I'm supposed to believe here. Now, there's probably some rudimentary truth built in here. And I think if you read the article, I can't do it. My brain hurts. Out with the Legos. I'm done. I can't look at this anymore. You read it if you want to. If you're willing to risk a decline in your IQ beyond just what I'm going to tell you, I promise you the link's there. I promise you it's not parody. It's not Babylon Bee or Dog Face Pony or something like that. This is real. These people are serious. And the discussions get even more ridiculous that these kids are attributed with vocabulary they don't have. But you know what they did? They changed all the children's names to protect their identity. Because you'd know who Oliver or Carl are. But if you read it, I think the actual problem they had, what they said is it created a sense of inequity. So when I first saw that, they're going to be like, well, Bill built a really high house and his looked really cool. And like the other kid was dumb and couldn't make anything that looked good. No, the kids actually built a giant Lego town. They had to find pieces I'm sure that it would be really hard for these kids to go home and bring more Legos in or something like that. It was impossible. They had to find them. They had to dig through all the old things and find the Legos. But the kids built this huge Lego town. And they came up with ways to actually make it work and to talk about it and to get through it and justify using different pieces. They actually became very cooperative in their creation. And then one day, completely by accident, somebody accidentally broke Lego Town. And the kids were devastated by it, but they decided, the teachers, that Lego Town needed to go away because it pointed out inequities in society. And the kids were having conversations like, I think houses should all be the same size, but mine is a fire station. This is the dumbest thing ever, and these people are shaping the mind of your children, and they're serious, and they believe they're all bullshit. Now, you might think, Jack, with all the crap going on with grooming and gender bullshit identity, this is really not important compared to that. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. They're both bad. But this idea, first of all, I know I said it'll lower your IQ, but go just try to read. Don't read all of the pablum. It will hurt your brain. But read the conversation these kids supposedly had with each other about what makes something yours and what makes it not yours. How do you get a thing and how does it become yours? So if you put your name on it, it's yours. Right? The discussions, these are completely fabricated in the mind of these freaking infantile adults. Accidentally. Lego Town got accidentally destroyed. See, I do believe there is some truth in this. I do believe these kids built a Lego Town. I do believe these kids, because that's what kids do if you give them the opportunity, cooperated, collaborated, and made something beautiful. And I believe it so disturbed these sick-minded individuals that they couldn't stomach it, and they destroyed it, and then they banned it, and then they had the audacity to rewrite the conversations these children had to fit their own agenda and write an article about it and be proud of it. This is why I'm so hard on teachers, because this is where we've gotten today. And they think you're stupid enough to believe it. And I'm going to show you something else, something totally different. This is something that many of you guys have sent me. I've gotten this from a bunch of people. I've seen it on social media a lot. And I don't think people are getting how dangerous this is. What I'm about to show you, and I'll probably take it out of the audio side because it's just going to sound like a bunch of nonsense if you can't see what's going on with the video with it while it's happening. But this is not fake. This is not a joke. This is IRS recruits being trained or recruited and taught like what part of your responsibilities will be as a law enforcement auditor, right? You're not just going to audit and be a bookkeeper and do forensic accounting. You're going to go get bad guys, and we're going to give you a gun, and you're going to go in and arrest people and put handcuffs on them. And people are sending me this, and they're laughing and they're mocking, and they don't understand how dangerous this is. Let me play this for you, and let me assure you that this is incredibly dangerous. This is very dangerous, and it's not limited to the FBI, this type of thing.
All right, so we'll take it along the wall and line up on the wall, okay? Right there's good. You can do your line up there, whoever's going first. All right, you guys got everybody here? All right, you're all ready? Guns out. All right, whenever you guys are ready, you can go.
Please, federal agent.
Please. Put your hands up.
Put your hands up.
Gonna arrest you.
Where's that hands up? Put your hands up and stop moving.
What are you looking for?
Do you have any weapons up, sir?
What are you looking for?
Look for action camera.
Where's that?
No, sir. Stay put. That is not action camera.
Oh, it ain't me.
Do you have any weapons? Do you have any weapons?
I'm not saying nothing.
Sir, do you have any weapons on you?
I don't even know who you guys are. I'm not saying anything.
Sir, I'm an IRS special agent. Do you have any weapons on you?
I'm not saying anything.
All right, please
You
get
do
on.
what you gotta do. I'm not saying anything.
Turn around. Hands to the side.
I have a gun. Yeah, I have a permit. It's
Slowly
legal.
behind your back.
Can we take your weapon, please?
Well, if you're going to ask me, I don't know. I'm going to say no.
All right.
Spread your legs.
Getting arrested?
Do you have any other weapons on you?
Hands behind
No.
your back.
Can you please put your hands behind your back?
Don't move.
Can you lean forward?
Action camera. Take your hand. You're under arrest. You're under arrest for conspiracy.
Can you please turn around? Bend over.
Hands up. You got no right.
Serious.
I know.
Slowly.
Okay. These people, and we had somebody point out, what they're learning, it's training. Of course, they're not very good at what they're doing or whatever. Yeah, they pointed their guns at each other, I think, more than the people that they were supposed to be arresting. Yeah, terrifyingly bad weapons handling. See, you can say they're being trained or they're learning, but before you put somebody into that level of training, you teach them basic weapons discipline, which they don't even have. I don't care how much training they give these people are going to be incompetent with weapons. They're never going to move the way that they really would be moving in a proper law enforcement mechanism. These are not people that have confidence to be going into a situation with a badge and a gun apprehending people and be in that situation. Several years ago, there was a female state trooper in Oklahoma that shot a guy with his hands up against a vehicle. And she said it was because he reached inside the vehicle. The vehicle's freaking window was closed. And a police officer emailed me. He said, "You finally made a bad prediction." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You said that woman's going to go to prison for this, and she's not." By the way, he was right and I was wrong. He said, "They're going to take this woman, who probably should have never been a cop in the first place. They're going to put her in a witness chair, and they're going to make her as small and weak looking as possible. And they're going to show pictures of how big this guy was. And they're going to convince that jury that he was a threat to her no matter what the video shows. And they're going to believe it, and they're going to side with her, and she's going to get away with it." And he said, "This is not you. This is a guy's a cop in I won't say what city, but a very large department." He said, "This is not as unique as you think it is. This happens all the time. And we have people on our police forces that should not be cops, not because they're too aggressive, but because they're not confident in who and what they are, and they don't know how to handle the authority that they've been given, and they panic in these situations, they freak out, and they shoot when they shouldn't even have the damn weapons drawn." The group of people you just saw is worse than those people. These are the kind of people that go into a situation, they're all pumped up, they're all freaked out, they're going to go get the bad guy who's guilty of tax fraud, and somebody reaches for a wallet or something like that, and they just shoot them. And then you know what happens? They get away with it. This is dangerous. Hunter says, "I want to say that this was for TV, for the news story." No. These are the people. These are the types of people that are getting this type of training. This is real. This is what they're doing. This is what they will continue to do. And this is something you need to understand. If you're going to hire 87,000 IRS agents in the middle of a labor shortage to do forensic accounting work and law enforcement work combined, what do you think you're going to get for quality? If you're good enough to do this job on paper, unless you're someone that actually can't get another job somewhere because you interview poorly or something, there are jobs for you all over the place right now that pay better than entry-level IRS auditor / enforcer. I'm sorry, it's true. It may not have been true 25 years ago. It's true right now. It's true right now. And again, I think you need to understand this isn't about this video. This isn't about the IRS. This is about people in law enforcement that don't belong in law enforcement. There's something that happens when you give a person a badge and a gun. There's an authoritarian complex that it creates in the best person. And the best person in law enforcement is aware of this. It's like the two wolves story. And they fight to keep it in check. And they don't always, and if they're honest, they'll tell you, and they don't always manage to do it, that they overuse their authority at times. And they catch themselves. And the ones that catch themselves generally have an older cop around who's done his best for as many years as possible. He's gotten maturity and wisdom. And a lot of them never have that kind of a mentor. But when you take someone who was the wrong person from the get-go, when you take a person, to be bluntly honest, it was the kid that walked down the hall and people slapped the books out of their hands or pushed their head into the water fountain. And now they've grown into a man or a woman, but there's still that person inside, and you give that person a gun and a badge. You have a woman shoot an unarmed man with his hands up on the window of a vehicle saying that he reached inside the vehicle and getting away with it. That's what happens. That's what happens. And that's years before this. If you think this is about this only. But my bigger reason for bringing it to your attention is how many people are mocking this. I'm going to tell you right now, these people right here, you train them up as good as you can. And if they get in a firefight, they're getting whacked. They're getting whacked. They are not going to be capable, but they're not going to be in firefights. They're going to go out and they're going to deal with people who are largely compliant. And they're still going to kill people. And don't think it doesn't happen all the freaking time. Don't think it doesn't happen all the freaking time. Sometimes it's due to like racial prejudice. But usually it's just due to complete freaking incompetence. And a lack of confidence. This is how you have cops that sit outside a classroom while children are murdered. Because they won't go in. Because they don't have the courage to risk their life for the job that they want to get credit for risking their life by doing. And those of you that think I'm too hard on cops, there's an awful lot of cops in this audience. An awful lot of cops in this audience. And the times I get the most like rewarding emails for them is when I talk like this. That's when I get emails that say, keep saying it, keep telling the truth. You're right. It does happen. I've seen it happen. I do what I can, but it's limited. That's when I get emails from cops that tell me, I don't know how much longer I can do this. And somebody like, well, they should just quit. You know, a lot of them, you know why they say they're not quitting? Because they feel like they're at least some level of a check on that system. This is dangerous. This is dangerous. Now, got one more story for you today. One more big old serving of bullshit. Back to that Inflation Reduction Act from Biden. So, in there is a bunch of rebates to encourage people to buy electric vehicles, up to $7,500. Most of the more affordable electric vehicles, there are some affordable ones, by the way. They don't qualify for it. It's all the real expensive ones that all the poor people this is supposed to help can't afford. But like Ford's new electric pickup, it just went up by like $6,200 right as this thing passes. I can't remember the other one, but it went by like exactly $7,500. Basically, all the cars and trucks that qualify for this rebate went up by right about the amount that the rebate covers. Now, why would that happen? Why would that happen? Because people make purchasing decisions based on what they can afford. And people finance everything. And people buy a car this way. I can afford $600 a month. So show me cars that I can get for $600 a month. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Okay, so what happens? Ford goes, so the guy that can afford a car for a 7-year payment, because that's what they're doing now. They're financing shit 6-7 freaking years. Well, we can charge this much money and we can get him in at that $600 a month price point. That's all they do. And they say, well, what does that price look like? And if the government says, well, here's $7,500 worth of rebate, they just say, well, screw it. Now we can charge $7,500 more and he still pays $600. He'll buy the car. Now, do you think that the people pushing this shit don't know what I just told you? Of course they do. Whenever you subsidize anything with government money, the price of the thing you subsidize doesn't go down, it goes up, especially over time. Look at there we go. College price, same. I was just going to say college, R. Hill said college price. Exactly. When you subsidize, see, instead of paying the tuition for the students, here's a great idea. We'll guarantee that they can get the loan and tell them they don't have to pay it back while they're in school. And then when they get out of school, they can go get a job and they can pay it back. So what is the out-of-pocket price to the student? Nothing. So what does the school say? Well, we'll just keep raising the price based on whatever the average person can borrow. Why wouldn't you? Let's put in another building. Let's put in another library. Let's put a new quad in, right? Like, this is everything that is subsidized goes up in actual cost. Even if it doesn't go up in price that you see, it goes up in real cost. If you look at like what you would consider successful subsidies, you could go to agriculture and say, well, look at the price of a dozen eggs. It's highly nutritious product. Everybody needs it, and it's very affordable. And without the subsidies, how much more would it cost? Well, where do the subsidies come from? You think Bill Gates pays the bill? You think Jeff Bezos pays? No, you and I that eat the eggs out of their shitty system, those eggs cost more than they have any right to cost in reality. Corn. Yeah, corn. If we weren't making it into freaking gasoline, you'd have more corn than anybody would ever eat right now, including the cows you're feeding it to that shouldn't be eaten in the first place. But this is not the real reason I brought this up today. Our government is trying to convince you that they're doing everything they can to make electric cars affordable because electric vehicles are the future. Now, I said, some of you people are like, it only lasts 18 months and the batteries are dead. No, the average electric vehicle being built today is a better product from a performance, longevity, and maintenance standpoint than the average gas vehicle. It is, trust me. I certainly wouldn't tell you that if it wasn't true. And every claim that anybody's ever made, I've been able to look up specs and go, you're wrong. Here's the specs. And you know what I have to say about this audience? Generally speaking, they'll go check out what I send them and they'll go, shit, you're right. I didn't know. I should have looked first. That's one reason I really respect my audience. If you give them factual data and they investigate it and they find out that it wasn't in fact factual, they're like, shit, thank you. That's because y'all are freaking smart. But there is one thing I don't think any of you can come up with an answer for, no matter how smart you are. And some of you are way smarter than me. What's going to happen if this is successful, whatever that means, and next year, 10% of the vehicles on the road are replaced with electric vehicles to the electrical grid? Is anybody talking about this? So let me tell you, I've done the math, and the amount of energy necessary to go into the vehicle for the average person's commute, like mid-range commutes, because I'm not going to use Dallas-Fort Worth commutes. Our commutes, like, we are way longer than average commutes here in Dallas-Fort Worth. Everything's far. Everything's big. Everything's spaced out. But I'm like average, leave it to Beavertown, America. Depending on whose estimates you listen to, it will be like adding 2 to 5 HVAC systems to the home for one vehicle in that home to turn to electric. Let's go bottom end. 2. Now the house has gone from effectively using the energy of one HVAC system, that's heating and air conditioning for those that don't know, to 3. That's the bottom end. That's bottom end based on short commute, efficient vehicle, low use. 1 to 3. Right now, ERCOT, who is in charge of the mastery of power in Texas, is telling Texans, y'all need to not put your thermostat below 78 degrees during the day because we're making all the power we can and it's barely enough right now. We all know what happened 2 years ago when we got a really hard freeze and there was billions of dollars in damage done when the pipes thawed out that were broke. Few people died, not as many as they told you, but it was a miserable experience. Okay, that's during times where we're at like high stress levels. But what happens if 10% of everybody goes home and plugs their car in? And Scramblin says you plug your car in, it is the backup battery for your house in a brownout. Yeah, it can do some things, but you can only use the battery as backup if there's power in it. When you plug it in, and the power's down and it starts drawing power from the grid, how are we going to do this? Distributed storage. It doesn't matter if it's distributed storage. The distributed storage is great. I concur. Basically, putting an electric car in every home in America would distribute battery storage. It would be decentralized storage. I'm all for it. I'm all for a big old Tesla Powerwall or equivalent in every house in America. You still have to fill it up. The power has to come from somewhere. And you know where it doesn't come from? It doesn't come from a fucking jelly bean field, to be blunt. You have to generate and distribute the power to the location that it's being used at. There is not enough power generation capacity in North America right now to replace 10% of the vehicles, let alone their goal by 2030 of 50%. And this is the bigger problem. There's no plan to change that. It's not like we couldn't do it. And it's not like we couldn't do it with a lot cleaner energy than we have right now. First thing we should be doing is we should be building the ever-loving shit out of natural gas power plants. That's the fastest clean energy that we can produce. And it's not perfectly clean, but it's a hell of a lot cleaner than coal or oil. And we have an abundance of the gas, and we can move it, and we can do it. And so it's an immediate thing. And if you say you want electric vehicles, then you have to have it. But it's fossil fuels. It doesn't run on a jelly bean field. And I'm not done yet. The next thing we would do is we would start building next generation nuclear facilities. But the waste is going to kill us. Shut up. Next generation nuclear facilities would be using technology that we don't even touch right now. And they would be using thorium reactors. They produce almost no long-term waste. Not none, but almost none. They don't melt down. If you have a shutdown in a thorium plant, it just stops. And we had this technology for like 40 years, and we won't build anything with it because the original nuclear plants that we built, nuclear power plants, were just to advance technology so we could make better nuclear weapons. See, thorium won't make you a good nuclear weapon. It'll make you a shit ton of power. It's not 0-point energy. It's not free energy. It's not magic. It's just a shit load better than anything we have right now. And we won't do either one of those things. And as far as solar and wind, then put more in, but they're not gonna because they can't. Because where are you going to generate the power? And there's a loss. That's why we need things like Bitcoin mining that will help with that, but it can't do it all. It can't do it all. We can make all the wind energy we need for the whole country in the West Texas. But we can't get the energy from that location to the places that need to use it. Electricity doesn't work that way. If you can't explain freaking voltage loss, attenuation, impedance, you need to shut the hell. I'm talking politicians now, not y'all. These politicians are, well, there's electric that. How you plug it in? Wow, look, it's quiet. Like, if you can't explain what impedance is, shut your flap hole about renewable energy because you don't know anything. You don't know anything at all about renewable energy, electricity. You don't know shit if you can't explain what that means. And they can't. And you know they can't. Just like they want to regulate the internet. They don't know what TCP/IP is. They want to regulate cryptocurrency. They don't know what SHA-256 is. Shut up. This is part of the incompetence. This goes back to those agents with their little blue guns pointing at people and yelling and no idea what they're doing. Everything they regulate, they know nothing about. They know nothing about guns. They know nothing about transportation. Like, none of them can do anything. Most of them have never had a real job in their life. Most of them, if they were ever a professional, were lawyers. They couldn't put a bolt and a nut together to save their lives. If you ask them what a torque wrench is, they would no idea. They can't do anything. They've never done anything, and they want to regulate everything, which makes them perfect. They're perfect because they're not supposed to know anything. That's why when they tell you, well, my bill does, shut your mouth. You don't have a bill. You didn't write the bill. When the Congress clown, the Senate clown, whatever tells you, I have this bill that I've co-authored, you didn't author jack shit. You are a lying, festering cockroach. Pfizer wrote the bill. Johnson & Johnson wrote the bill. General Electric wrote the bill. Or I should say they paid for their lobbyists to write it, and you put your name on it, and you get your good boy stamp, and then it gets shoved down the American people's throat, and you promise them more freedom, and you take freedom from them. You promise to reduce inflation, and you increase it. And K-Bonk says Thomas Massey gets it. You know, there's a few Congress clowns that probably do get it, and you know what they mean in the grand scope of things? Nothing. Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, I can't think of the other dude. It's one other guy, kind of all right guy. I'm going to do a show soon about what I learned working in corporate America at high-level corporate positions. And let me tell you one of the things that I learned. Every big corporation seeks the power of monopoly with plausible deniability that they have a monopoly. I worked for a company called Sage Telecom, local phone service provider when people still had local phones. So they're the last one left. They're the last one left. The last CLEC on the planet. And I finally was talking to one of the people way up in the company and said, why don't they crush us like the cockroach we are? They could just get rid of us. Like, as long as we're here, the bigger companies say they don't have a monopoly, and they'll get rid of us as everything moves completely 100% to cellular and no one cares about local phone service anymore. But for now, it enables them to have a monopoly and look like they don't have a monopoly. That's why people like Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, et cetera, are permitted to exist, to create the illusion that there's someone there that really is fighting for you. It doesn't mean that I don't believe the words that come out of their mouth. I do. It doesn't mean that I don't believe that they're sincere. I do. It doesn't mean they won't virtue signal. You know, Rand Paul every year introducing a bill for term limits is virtue signaling because no one's going to do it. But, you know, sometimes you can virtue signal an actual virtue and point out, hey, see, they have no interest in actually fixing a problem. I'll give them that. But what did Rand's dad say during his farewell address from the Congress? Basically, Ron said, inside government, I accomplished absolutely nothing. I would say that Ron Paul has done more for liberty outside of government than inside it. Because the way that you gain liberty is people claim it for themselves, and they have to understand that they're slaves first. And Ron Paul's genius is the ability to convey to people in a way that's very rational, very down to earth, not quite as emotional as I get. Hey, dummy, you're a slave, and you shouldn't be. He doesn't use those words, though, does he? That's my words, right? But that's basically what happens. Hey, look at all this stuff that's happening here. Maybe you should look at this. It's all bull. And this is what I want to end with today. You're not going to fix it. You have to divorce it. You need to start looking at government as an abusive spouse. And in this relationship, you need to see yourself as a victimized female. Even I don't care if you're the biggest, toughest dude out there, like, oh, I'll get them. No, because they have way more power than you do. They have way more strength. I want you to think of the government as a giant bodybuilder, roided up, megalomaniac, narcissistic, abusive boyfriend. And you are the other side of that relationship. You're the wife, and you get smacked around every day. They tell you who you can talk to, when you can talk to them. They want to know what you spent your money on. Where were you? Give me your phone. Let me see who you've been talking to. Does this sound like government to you at all? Does it? And they have the physical means by which to require you to do the things they're saying, no matter how unreasonable they are. Now, I want you to step outside of the relationship for a minute. I want you to imagine that it's actually a real relationship. Do you know this young woman being beaten and abused by her husband? You've watched him rip her phone out of her hand and go, who is this? Who are you talking to? And she comes to you and says, what should I do? What would you tell her? Honest to God, what would you tell her? You need to get away from this guy. You get a restraining order if necessary. You need to divorce this son of a bitch and get him out of your life. And she says, well, I think he'll stalk me. Well, that's just a risk you're going to have to. It's not going to get any better until you do what you can to separate. As long as you remain in. Well, I think he can change. I think he really wants to do better. I think he can give up the drugs and the alcohol. And he's only hit me a couple times in the last couple months. It's not like it used to be. What would you say? Yeah, freaking Stockholm syndrome. Well, he's getting some counseling. You know what that is? We can vote new people in next election. No, you get a divorce from that situation. And you can't 100% exit this system, can you? You can't really get completely away. But you can mitigate the impact of that abusive partner in your relationship that is the state. There are many ways to do it. And one of the first things you can do, and that's why I do episodes like this once in a while, you can stop consuming the bullshit soup. When they go to feed it to you, don't swallow it. Most Americans are like baby freaking birds. And mama bird flies out and eats a bunch of bugs and other bullshit. And mama bird comes back and all the baby birds go, feed me. And they open their mouth as wide as they can. And then mama bird pukes bug shit down their throat and the baby bird eats it. It's okay for the baby bird to behave that way. It's the only way the baby bird's going to grow up and fly for itself. But when the media and the government pukes down your throat and you swallow it, it literally cements your ass to your couch. You get one life. You get one life. Even though those of you that believe in reincarnation or whatever, do you remember? No? Okay, you get one life when it comes to this time frame, this space-time. One. Every day, the sun goes down and you go to sleep. One of your little magic glowing beams that is your life force is gone. It's extinguished. If you could see it, it would be more real for you. If there was a giant bottle in your house and it was full of little glowing orbs, and every day you had to take a glowing orb out of that bottle and put it in your pocket. If you didn't do it, you'd die. And every day, I mean, when you're young, you look at that bottle, it's huge. I don't have to worry about it. I just get my orb every day. All of a sudden, you look at that bottle, it's half empty or more. You might start thinking about the value of that little one orb, that one day in your life. You might start to think, wait a minute, I better do something with this. Well, what you should be doing with it, I don't know. Only you can answer that. But you shouldn't be swallowing bullshit soup from the TV, the government. Build your life. Because all this shit I told you about today is for your awareness. You're not going to change the fact that the government calls a bill the Flowers for Orphan bills that literally goes out and steals flowers from orphans. And makes more orphans and less flowers at the same time. That's what they do. You're not going to change that. You're not going to fix the electrical grid. They're not going to start using thorium because some redneck duck farmer told you about it. They're going to crash the freaking electrical grid. And then they're going to be like, oh, we don't know what to do now. Maybe we need to build some more cars that are gas or something. This didn't work. They're gonna point and play grab ass and blame each other and say it's the Democrats will say, well, it does those Republicans, they didn't let us put enough solar in. It's their fault. And the Republicans will say, it's their fault. They didn't let us put enough coal plants in. And the solution was neither. And you'll buy into it if you keep eating the bullshit soup. You'll suck it right down. Yum, 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 yum. Love me some mierda de toro. Right? Sopa de mierda de toro. Bueno. Or you can divorce the sons of bitches. You build your homestead. You build your business. You build your life. You build your community. You take your kids out of their freaking schools. You defy them in every way. But you don't defy them with words. You defy them with action. There is no more greater act of insurrection and rebellion than living your life in spite of the fact that somebody told you you can't. and doing it right out in the open in such a way that it's very difficult for anybody to do anything about it. You render them irrelevant. So while we have Start9 as a sponsor, you take control of your data. You take control of your wealth. You become ungovernable. They tell you you can't have something, you print it, you make it, you manufacture it. You don't want the drill in the drill bit. You want a hole. And you start thinking that way. How do I make the hole? How do I crawl through it? How do I escape? Next t-shirt, don't eat the bullshit soup. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea, Green Skull Farm. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed today's show. Tomorrow will be an expert counsel Q&A show. I want to remind you, one of the ways you can help support this show is to do your online shopping at tspaz.com. That's TSPAZ, tspaz.com. If you go to tspaz.com, you can help us out no matter what you buy. And you'll find all the stuff that I recommend over at tspaz.com. Reviews, and if it's there, I own it. I bought it. I spent my money on it, and I would buy it again, or I won't recommend it. And I've got something for you today that I've definitely brought around before, but it's the Anova Sous Vide cooker, and it's not the expensive one that I own. Honestly, I'm going to tell you, if they had the one that I'm recommending now, when I bought mine, I would have bought it. The more expensive one, which is the one you see in the picture right now, the kind of the full bore one, that'll attach to your computer network. And you can start it while you're at work and you're on your way home. It'll have your food ready for you and stuff. I've talked to a lot of people who have it. There's a few people use it that way. Very few people do. Most people, you stick it in the pot or whatever you have the water in, you're sous videing your food, and you turn the dial to the temperature you want, you hit start, you set a timer. That's what most people do. Well, they have this one called the Nano, and it is really bass, and it's on sale today for 27% off, and it's just black instead of the silver. It's a little bit smaller. If you've never tried sous vide cooking, I really recommend that you give it a shot. What you're doing, if some people think you're boiling meat when you sous vide, you're not. You basically dry poaching. You get precision control of temperatures. I don't want to go deep into it. I've done shows on sous vide cooking. I'll probably do them again. But it will make your life just a little bit better. And right now, I think we could all use that. You know what you tell someone? We just talked about getting divorced from the abusive husband. You know what you tell a woman after she does that? Start going to the gym. Buy yourself some new clothes. Take care of yourself. Feel good about yourself, right? Well, when you're divorcing these systems, take care of yourself. Go to the gym. Eat a steak dinner at home better than one you can buy at a restaurant. Be proud of the fact you learned how to do it. I do have an evil plan to take over the world, but I plan to do it for each person in their own world. One of my favorite authors is a guy named Richard Bach. And Illusions, one of the characters in it he's talking to, Richard says something about the world. I said, come on, Richard, you really don't think that 7 billion people don't live in 7 billion different worlds? That's the key to being free, folks. Build freedom in your world. Build your world your way. Interact with other people in their worlds on the interactive edge in the way that you most want to, and exclude everything you can possibly exclude that you don't want in your life. With that, I'll be back tomorrow with that Expert Counsel Q&A show, and then we have a great weekend coming. Thanks for hanging out with me. I know I didn't do any Q&A today, but we're at an hour and a half, and I got to get wrapped up. I'll catch you guys tomorrow.